Sorry. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Clerk, for this note. So we'd like to call our meeting to order for today, June 28, 2021, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. There's the statement I would like to read first. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendment listed as item 1 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendment are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of recipient of the application for zoning and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comment on these amendments prior to their consideration by the City Council on July 7, please email or call committee or council coordinator. Noted to committee members, obviously we're still having the meeting on virtual. So Councillor, as a reminder, if you have any motion on any of the item listed today, please send a copy to us ahead of the public delegation so that committee member and staff have an opportunity to review as necessary. Clarify your motion during the discussion of the matter. Thank you. And we don't have regret today. So Mr. Clerk, can we do the roll call, please?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Meehan.
I'm here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts.
Here.
And Chairman Shantiri.
Here, thank you. So with that, so we obviously have quorum, all of us here. Declaration of interest. I see none. Confirmation of minutes, May 23rd meeting of the June 3rd, 2021 of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. On a minute, Carrie.
Carried.
Carried, thank you. Item number 1, Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Plan Service. Item number 1, Zoning Bylaw Amendment 2261 O'Toole Road in Cumberland Ward. And the item 1 is, so we'll go through the consent agenda and we'll come back to the hold item. So the item number 1, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-2504 2261 O'Toole Road for the purpose of rezoning portion of the land from Agriculture AG to Agriculture Subzone 5 AG5 to prohibit residential use on a retaining farm land as detailed in document 2. Item number 2, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation detailed section of this report be included as part of brief explanation. On item number 1, do we have any speaker, Mr.?
There is the one delegation who does not need to speak if it carries on consent. It's the applicant Wander and Willard McWilliams. I'm not sure if they're on or not, but
okay. But this item is a straightforward, just severance from the so on the item, can we carry item number 1?
Carried.
Okay.
Carried.
So you can notify if no need to speak. If I'm not sure if Mr. McWilliams, I see him on the screen. Mr. McWilliams, you don't have to speak since we carried the item. Is that correct? I see him on the screen, but anyway. Item number 2, official plan and zoning 200 Ross Bradley Road. And that's this item we have, as we heard, we have speaker about it, 5 speakers. So we'll hold item number 2. Item number 3, amendment to permit on-farm diversified use and agriculture related use in rural and agricultural zones of the city. So we do have a presentation from us, and I believe we might have some speakers. Is that correct?
One delegation.
One delegation. So we'll hold item number 3. Item number 4, City of Ottawa zoning bylaw 2008-250 omnibus amendment for Q2 2021. On this item, do you have any question, any concern, or we can carry this item?
Carried.
Okay, thank you very much.
Carried.
Thank you. Item number 5, and it's a zoning bylaw amendment, general zoning provisions, parking and secondary dwelling unit. So this item, we have a speaker, Mr. Clerk, is that correct?
We have 2 speakers, yes.
2 speakers now, okay. So we'll hold item number 5. Sorry, I only have Chris Habits. You have another name, Mark?
There's the first one is Tony Miller,
Oh,
and the second one is Chris Habits.
So we'll hold item number 5. Item number 6 is the zoning bylaw amendment, rural property affected by the official plan amendment 180. And I believe we have a motion on this item from Councillor Moffat. Councillor Moffat, would you like to introduce your motion now? Because we do have a speaker, or we don't have a speaker. We receive an email about this item, but Councillor Moffat is with his motion that will take care of that. So, Councillor Moffat, we'll turn it to you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, this is it's another one of those items where we're simply zoning the things that we've already approved the designation changes of. However, members of committee might recall a ongoing study referred to as the Bleaks Fallowfield soil study. So the properties subject to that study, which has yet to conclude, are contained in this report for final zoning. So it's premature to zone those properties. So as such, we have a meeting, this motion before committee. I don't know who this Councillor Moffat with 1T is, but I'll move the motion on his behalf. So whereas at its meeting of July 2020, the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee directed that a study of the agricultural potential of the lands within the Bleaks Fallowfield area as shown on the map on page 12 of document 1 of this report be conducted prior to any change in zoning of these lands, whereas staff recognizes premature for the affected lands of Bleaks Fallowfield area to be rezoned prior to the completion of study. Therefore, be it resolved that document 1 of this report be amended by removing the map located on page 12 from the lands to be affected by this zoning bylaw amendment. That part would then come back after we've concluded the Fallowfield, the Bleaks Fallowfield study.
Mute. Mr. Herwire, I see on screen. Do you have anything to add to Councillor Moffat's motion?
Thank you, Chair. No, just want to confirm that staff worked with a councillor to draft the motion and support it, and agree it would be premature to deal with these lands until that study is brought forward. So we concur.
Okay, thank you very much. So obviously removing that map will give us more time for the study for the Lear study. So on Councillor Moffat's motion, Carrie?
Carried.
Okay, on the report, Carrie, as amended?
Carried. Carried.
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Herwire. So we do have councillors' item, Councillor George Deroux's item number 7, always stop control at the intersection of Gregory Road and Marvelville Road. So we have the Mayor Pierre Leroux was supposed to be attending. Unfortunately, he sent me a message this morning he would not be able to attend, and that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend that Council approve the installation of all-way stop control at the intersection of Gregory Road and Marvelville Road. Route 400. Any question, any concern about this item, or we can carry this item?
I really appreciate if we can carry this item, Mr. Chair. This is a request came from Russell Township. This area on the east side of Osgood Road at the corner, it is really growing, and all the intersection east on boundary, they all have four-way other than this one, and there is a new subdivision. You can't count how many near misses because they don't happen, but it is for safety perspective for the community. I think it's necessary to carry this item, and I appreciate all the work staff did in the back end. So, thank you.
Okay. And item number 7.
Just a quick question.
Okay.
Just something that's not in the report. I don't see it in the report. What's the ratio of on this road between the two roads, the balance of traffic between the two roads?
I think, is that Phil Landry, or Phil is not with us today? Who's with us today?
Riley Carter's here.
I see Gil, and I see probably
Riley
I think
Carter.
Riley's the best one to answer this question. Sorry, it's Gil Tate. So Riley's the best one to do it because he was the one that assisted the counselor with writing the report and did the observations of the study. Riley, do you have that information for the split?
Yeah, through the chair, it's about 50-50, slightly higher on.
You're cutting out, Riley. Can you speak closer to your mic?
Yeah, sorry. It's about 50-50 split. Boundary has slightly less, or sorry, Gregoire has slightly less traffic than Route 400 does.
Okay, so one of the streets isn't overloaded compared to the other street. It's just a matter of the total volume. It's not meeting the total volume warrant then.
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Riley and Gil. So on item number 7, can we carry?
okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, folks. And so we'll go back to the held item, and item number 2 is the first item, right? But 200 Ross Bradley Road, and that's basically the Carp Airport property. So we have staff to answer question, but we have 5 delegation. Delegation number 1, and I hope I'm not gonna ruin your last name, Nora Daddy. Nora, are you with us?
Apparently, according to my assistant, there are none of the delegations other than Adam Thompson is on at the present time.
Oh. So, okay, why don't we, with the committees, can we go to item number 3 and we'll come back to item number 2? Maybe by that time they would join us.
Yes.
Had not. Okay, thank you very much. So item number 3, and that's Marika. So I'll turn it to you, and that's the on-farm diversified use and agriculture related use. So Marika, back to you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee. I hope the sound is okay. I'm on my phone and I've never done this before, so please let me know if there's any problem.
It sounds very clear. Thank you.
See, the slides are up. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about the proposed amendments to permit small-scale commercial and industrial businesses to establish as secondary uses on farms, on what are otherwise protected agricultural lands. These changes will apply to almost all zoning designations that permit agriculture as a principal use of land in Ottawa. Next slide, please. So why do we want to permit these types of diversified businesses on farms? Well, as the quote on the screen suggests, there is an increasing belief, and this is supported through research, that to preserve agriculture, it is not enough to preserve the land. Society must also preserve the farmer. So I'm sure many of you are aware that the number of farms in Ontario is on the decline overall, and the number of large commercial farms is increasing. So that leaves small to medium-sized farms looking for ways to maintain viability. One way of doing this is through an additional business, a diversified business that generates more income and permits greater stability for the farm. The intent of the amendments proposed in this report is to allow farmers to branch out and add to their income, while also being mindful of compatibility with the local rural context and the need to protect agricultural land for future generations. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of background on how we got here. The proposed amendments are to bring City of Ottawa regulations into alignment with provincial direction. The province started permitting diversified farm businesses back in 2014 through the provincial policy statement. This is when the terms on-farm diversified use and agriculture-related use were introduced. On-farm diversified uses are defined as being small in scale and secondary to a farming operation. Agriculture-related uses support farming directly and benefit from being in proximity to local farms. Because these uses represent a departure from existing permissions for prime agricultural lands, the province also produced a guide document in 2016 to aid municipalities in developing appropriate regulations for these diversified uses. So what we're going to see proposed here today is largely based on that guide. In 2017, we updated our official plan policies to reflect the new permissions through Official Plan Amendment 180, permitting the new diversified uses in both the agricultural resource area and the general rural area of that plan. And I will note that there are some basic permissions for on-farm diversified use in the zoning bylaw currently. These were enacted in 2019 as a kind of interim solution prior to commencement of this zoning study. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the proposed amendments are largely based on the guide document produced by the province called the Guidelines on Permitted Uses in Ontario's Prime Agricultural Areas. Included in this document are recommended policy approaches, appropriate area limitations, a discussion of how various uses might be categorized, items to think about when considering compatibility, impact mitigation, and various regulatory tools available to municipalities to support them in regulating these new uses. It's quite a comprehensive document. This document, though it emphasizes permitting diversified uses as a means of supporting farmers, it also emphasizes that equally important is the continued protection of agricultural resources, as well as the natural environment and the existing cultural heritage. Next slide, please. This report also takes direction and in particular considers public input received during the development of Ottawa's Rural Economic Development Strategy and Action Plan, which was approved by Council in March of 2020. This strategy provides insight into many of the issues faced by rural residents, as well as Ottawa's goals for the economic future of our rural areas. Rural Ottawa makes up about 80% of the city's land area, and about 40% of that is identified as prime agricultural land, or in other words, land on which diversified farm uses are to be permitted according to the province. Prime agricultural lands typically fall within the agricultural resource designation of our official plan. The strategy also notes that increasing flexibility for agriculture in the general rural designation of the official plan may be beneficial as well in alleviating some of the challenges associated with the smaller agricultural parcels. So for this reason, diversified uses are proposed to be permitted in both the agricultural resource and the general rural designations of the official plan. Lastly, these permissions are also coming at an appropriate time since the federal Rural Economic Development Strategy was also recently released. And that strategy includes a focus, among other things, on extending high-speed internet and renewing rural infrastructure. So this means small businesses will be better equipped to accommodate diversified uses in the coming years, particularly with respect to infrastructure for goods and service transactions. Next slide, please. So before I get into the goals of the study, I thought it would be useful to go through how the province actually defines these diversified uses. So what is an on-farm diversified use? The term is meant to capture different kinds of commercial or industrial uses that are secondary to agriculture and limited in area. The province does provide a list of examples, things like home industries, value-added production, and farm tourism activities, but that list is not exhaustive. So note that though the definition references uses that benefit from the agricultural context or make use of agricultural products, the permissions do not require that the use be directly related to the farming operation. One could establish, for example, a bakery as a secondary use on, say, a dairy farm, or a winery could supplement their business by retailing commercial products derived from offsite, so long as the use isn't hindering local agriculture. The term secondary to farming is also important to note. Secondary means that these uses are only permitted if there is a principal agricultural operation on site. It will be up to the applicant to provide evidence demonstrating that this is the case, that agriculture is the principal use. And further, once an on-farm diversified use is established, should the farm operation stop, then the diversified use is no longer permitted. Severances for this type of use are equally not appropriate. Next slide, please. So in contrast to on-farm diversified uses, the province also has a definition for those uses that are directly related to agriculture. The term agriculture-related use describes those uses that are directly in support of and benefit from being in proximity to local farms. These uses include things like grain storage, farm equipment repair, or even, as would be the case often with breweries and wineries, the importing of grapes or hops for their production activities. Because of the relationship with local agriculture with these types of uses, provincial guidelines suggest that there may be greater opportunity for flexibility in area limitations for agriculture-related uses. Again, though, these uses must be compatible with and not hinder surrounding agricultural operations. Currently, the official plan requires a zoning bylaw amendment to permit a new agriculture-related use. What we're proposing as part of this proposal is to permit 2 uses as agriculture-related uses as of right under zoning. These are non-accessory storage of farm products and farm-related machinery, and associated sorting and packing of farm products. By virtue of their similarity to standard agricultural activities, these uses will be permitted as principal uses of land in certain rural zones where minimum lot area requirements can be met. Permitted lot coverage will also be larger for agriculture related than for other diversified uses. And for those concerned about wanting to establish other types of agriculture related uses than what I've just listed, these uses will still be permitted, but under the on-farm diversified use category. And I'll go over that in a minute, but the point being that we won't be preventing other types of farm related uses, like say an abattoir is one that's been brought up a couple of times, but such uses won't be permitted as standalone uses on a lot, other than if they were to go through the zoning bylaw amendment application process as the current policy requires. Next slide, please. So with those use definitions in mind, this study proposes amendments that are based on 3 key goals. The first is an idea that came out of our rural consultations, which is that we want to provide opportunities for innovation. So rather than selecting and trying to define a few specific uses that might be thought of as compatible on agricultural lands, and which may also be difficult to define, in fact, from a land use perspective. We wanted to provide broad opportunities for business types that may be new or undefined in the zoning bylaw. Second, we will, of course, need to balance that goal with the protection of farmland and the natural environment for future generations. Part of that protection will be done through maximum area provisions for these uses. These first two goals come together to form the basis of our proposed strategy, a strategy which focuses much more heavily on regulating the size of use rather than the type of use. So we want to ensure that our policies don't stand in the way of new ideas, but also to ensure that there is still appropriate oversight taking place to ensure farmland remains protected, uses are compatible, and impacts are mitigated as much as possible. And then lastly, we also want to ensure that we are considerate of potential barriers to starting a new diversified business, reducing where we can associated fees, and making the application process as straightforward as possible. Next slide, please. So what does balancing of opportunities with protection of farmland look like in terms of policy? So as I said, our goal is to permit that broad spectrum of new commercial and industrial uses on farms. To allow for that, the area maximums we are proposing have to be fixed. In other words, we are not in support of incremental increases to the area maximums that will be outlined in the zoning bylaw. Should the proposed use exceed the permitted area, we would view this as a change of use from a secondary on-farm diversified use to a principal commercial or industrial use of land. And that would therefore require a zoning bylaw amendment to establish. In addition to the fixed area maximums, we are proposing to apply site plan control to applications for diversified farm uses. This is in order to permit review of site layout, ensure compliance with hydro-G and terrain analysis guidelines, and review compatibility with respect to traffic, noise, and nuisance. These items have to be reviewed on a site-specific basis, and site plan control permits that to happen. Keep in mind that site plan control fees for small rural projects are much less than standard fees for site plan control. And the benefit, again, is that the use of this tool will permit a much broader range of small scale diversified uses to be established on agricultural lands, essentially as of right, without requiring a zoning bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. So to support the continued protection of agriculture, we are proposing limitations on area for diversified uses. So a lot coverage of 2% of the lot to a maximum of 1 hectare is proposed, and that is directly from the provincial guidelines. Maximum lot coverage will include features, various features associated with the use, so parking, landscaping, buildings and laneways, with certain exemptions to promote the retention and reuse of existing farm buildings. Buildings themselves will be further limited to 20% of that 2% lot area. This number is again taken from the provincial guidelines. We are also proposing floor area maximums, which will include larger floor areas for building conversions to encourage reuse and maintenance of existing buildings and character, and smaller but still fairly large floor area maximums for new builds. I will also note that we are proposing no change to the existing zoning area maximums for place of assembly uses, such as wedding venues, as well as extending that maximum to similar high occupancy and therefore higher impact uses, such as restaurants. When I say higher impact, I mean anticipated strain on water and wastewater systems based on Ontario Building Code requirements for things like sprinkler systems and public washrooms, as well as traffic and parking impacts and potential noise and nuisance to surrounding properties typically associated with these uses. So these uses will be permitted in locations where they have traditionally not been permitted, but only insofar as they are at a scale that is anticipated to be more or less compatible. The intent is to keep visitors, at least in this as of right context, below about 100 people. For those winery type uses, I will also note that processing activities that incorporate inputs like grapes from off-site, though this is a diversified use, will not be subject to the floor area maximums just proposed and will only be subject to the total lot area maximum of 2%, again, to provide some flexibility there. I'll reiterate that these area limitations are what ensures that the use remains secondary to a principal agricultural use and how compatibility is proposed to be addressed. Uses larger than these maximums continue to have the option to locate on an appropriately zoned site, or alternatively, the zoning bylaw amendment process application process is an available option for those who can demonstrate that the site can accommodate the use and that the use is in keeping with provincial policy. Next slide, please. So we're getting there. Our last goal was to reduce potential barriers to entry. In order to achieve that goal, we looked at costs and accessibility. One of the things that we're proposing as part of this amendment is exempting diversified uses from having to pay cash in lieu of parkland, which typically amounts to 2% of the value of the land. I also want to highlight the city's efforts to reduce property taxes for diversified uses. Under the current system, where a commercial use is proposed, a minimum area of 1 acre is taxed at a commercial rate. The city also recently adopted a new small-scale on-farm business property subclass in 2019, which further reduces the first $50,000 of commercial use land value by 75%. I think that's great news for farmers looking to diversify. Next slide, please. And lastly, we are producing a guide document to aid potential applicants in understanding development applications, fees, and other site considerations and resources available for establishing a diversified farm business. Sorry.
Mark, what happened? Did we lose Marika?
I think we lost Marika.
I think that was one of the last slide, I believe. We'll give her a minute or
Can
two.
go to the next slide just to see.
Yeah, just that was it.
I doubt you meant to log off though. The phone must have kicked out. Yeah, we're balanced then. So careful.
We're all in. See.
Yeah.
Folks, can you turn your mic off because we can hear you?
We seem to have lost Marika.
Okay, so thank you for your.
We seem to have lost Marika. Oh, there she is.
Hello. Are you back, Marika? I know. Okay. Thank you for your call.
We seem to have lost Marika. Oh, there she is.
Hello. Are you back, Marika? I know. Okay. Thank you for your call.
We seem to have lost Marika. Oh, there she is.
Okay, something wrong with the system. Can we just hold on for a second? Marika, we saw the last slide, so we're good to go on this end. So we're good to go. We have one delegation, two named Janet and Tom Moll, to speak about this from the Jubilani Vineyard. So we have one delegation. Janet, are you on the line? You and Tom?
Hello, I hope you can hear us all.
Good morning.
Good. Okay, great. It's actually not so much a comment as I have 4 questions, if that's allowed. And I'm so glad that Marika's back online because the questions are for her.
So just hold on for a second, Tom. You cannot ask our staff. So do your presentation. If you have any questions, maybe one of my colleagues will ask you about your question, but then staff can come back and answer some of those questions, but you cannot ask them directly.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Question number 1, the floor area maximum for on-farm diversified uses is 600 square meters. The floor area maximum is not applied to areas used for processing inputs, such as a winery. If our area exceeds the maximum 600 meters, it's 720 actually, and is used 8 months of the year as a winery, and 4 months of the year it's used as a retail store and other things, is that permitted? So in other words, dual use for one building.
Because that's not what was shown in the actual presentation. It was shown a winery processing separate and say an event venue on the property as a separate building. If it's all housed in one and the same building, but obviously used more as the winery than the event, is that still permitted? That's a question with that. You want to go to the second question? Obviously used more as the winery than the event, is that still permitted? That's
Yes.
keep going. That's me here. I've got an echo.
So question number 2 for the Chair. If we wanted to expand our operation by building a second winery building, the limitation of 300 square meters for new buildings would not apply because it actually doesn't apply to wineries. Is that correct? In other words, could our second building be greater than 300 square meters if it's also processing agricultural product? And question number 3, for buildings larger than 300 square meters with parking lots greater than 9 places, as per the document, they are currently subjected to site plan control review. Wanted to ask if we can have clarification on what impact that site plan control review may have on us. Okay. Question number 4 and the last question is, there's an organization called MPAC that have their own profile rules for determination of areas in a winery environment based on a study that they did in 2016. So I don't think that they are aligned with what Marika presented. Just want to make sure we are aligned because MPAC actually has an impact obviously on property taxes for wineries.
What they have deemed commercial and industrial and the percentage is very different from what's in Marika's presentation.
Okay. So we heard your questions. Anything else, Janet and Tom?
No, thank you very much for hearing us. Thank you, Chair.
Don't go yet. I mean, you both have echo somehow. When you use one mic at the time and the other person turn off the mic, please, because it seems it's quite echo coming from your end. We have question from Councillor Moffat, so please hold on. Councillor Moffat, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I think the echo issue was actually coming through Marika's end
Okay.
for some reason. I'm not sure what was going on there, but so a lot of the questions, Janet, Tom, good to hear from you. The questions, can you send those to us? So, well, ideally to me, so I can get those answers for you, because I don't think we're going to have those answers for you right this instant. Just having some challenges, some technical challenges with Marika's connection to stay on the meeting. So I don't even know if I can ask her those questions right now. So I'd appreciate if you could email those to me. You can copy the members of the committee too, and we'll get you those answers.
Sure, okay. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, I think Marika's back on. Marika, did you heard the question from Tom and Janet?
Yes, they seem to be very site-specific questions. We would need to review the details of that particular development to be able to provide a real answer on that.
So if Janet and Tom send you those questions through Councillor Moffat or to you directly, you'll be able to respond to them and copy the committee members. Is that what you'd be able to do?
Of course. Yep. Anytime.
Okay. Thank you very much. Would that be satisfactory, Councilor Moffat?
Yeah, absolutely. Javelani is one of our great assets in rural Ottawa, and it's so it's important to have them here. And this is a growing industry that we're seeing in the Ottawa area, and it's one that we want to make sure that we're supporting. So I want to make sure that our policies align with fostering that growth.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilor Moffat. Councilor Meehan, I see you had up first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hi, everyone. I'm just wondering if could I get an example of what it would mean to for the secondary industry or business to hinder local agriculture? What would that mean specifically?
Marika?
I don't know if that's working. I mean, I think it varies depending on what the local agriculture is. One example, common example that I can think of is traffic. There are a lot of slow moving agricultural vehicles on accessing some of these properties. And if you're increasing the level of traffic, then it may hinder the ability of these farmers to be using those roads the way they need to in order to run their business.
No, I was thinking about that because if it turns out to be a local winery or something that invites a lot of customers, because there's certainly a lot of interest in these small startups. Yeah, it may result in a much more traffic on some of these local roads. So who's going to determine when that becomes a problem?
Mr. Chair, that's part of the reason that we're proposing to apply site plan control to these types of, that we can do that site specific review. Can you hear what I'm?
Yes, we can.
Sorry.
There are also the limits on size, and that's the importance of the limits on size. And really the intent behind those guidelines is to keep the size small to decrease the opportunity, or rather, it's to give farmers an opportunity to have additional businesses, but it's also to control impacts on adjacent farms. So an example of another impact would be wedding venues on farms. Often there's noise associated with them late at night. People set off fireworks to celebrate, which is really nice, but that can affect dairy farms nearby. It can affect how much milk the cows make nearby. It can upset the animals. So that's just one example of the type of impact that can be seen.
But isn't those are being looked after, Carol, when we do the site plan control? Doesn't that be, deal with all those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you think the site plan?
It's municipal bylaws in effect, to regulate when fireworks can be set off and so on. But these things happen, as when people just aren't aware of what the bylaw requirements are. But it can impact adjacent farmers. So, but I think the reason why the OMOFRA has allowed on-farm diversified uses is because it's felt that all of these impacts can be adequately looked after through municipal bylaws and through other through development review processes. And there's still great potential for farmers to have other businesses on their farms, and that's what America's amendments will achieve. Are a lot of more increased opportunities for farmers, we hope.
No, I totally agree. I think it's a fabulous idea, but the fact of the matter is, for when it comes down to the site plan, do the neighbors, will they be able to weigh in just on perhaps their concerns about the establishment of a secondary business on, say, the adjacent farm?
It's not so much the use that's the issue. The use would be permitted, based on limited sizes. Site plan control would look after the impacts, associated with parking and making sure that access is safe and done properly for the site. Things like that, where is waste being picked up and so on. What is the lighting like? So site plan control can look after those aspects of the use.
But then do the neighbors get a say at some point in some stage, maybe the site plan control, but previous to that step?
America, would you like to answer it in terms of how the zoning provisions are written to circumscribe the types of uses that are permitted?
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, again, the intent is to permit that broad range of uses so that farmers have the opportunity to innovate. So we are prescribing very specific area maximums, and that's how we are proposing to deal with issues of compatibility. The neighbors would have an opportunity to provide input if the proposal was for a use that was larger than those area maximums that have already been looked at and considered to be compatible at that very limited size. So it is at the stage where an applicant might be going through a zoning bylaw amendment process where there would then be opportunity for public input because it's exceeding that size that, that we're proposing to be limited in the zoning bylaw.
Well, that answers my question. I think I had one more just. Now this, it's hypothetical, but what if this little, if the secondary business becomes extremely popular, can it be severed off? Could that business be sold? It could not be sold on that and operated on the farmland, could it? No.
No.
Okay, that's it then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meehan and Councillor DeRose.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's I just want to thank Marika and Carol for the great presentation and great answering those questions that we are going to have some challenges, and we are probably going to have some issues arise, but the bottom line is the presentation and what we're proposing is an amazing things for the rural Ottawa and the city of Ottawa. I mean, we visited many wineries in Councillor Moffat. We have Tom and Janet on the line today. We visit in Ken and in Kinburn. I know there is money opportunity in Osgood Ward and in Cumberland and everywhere. I know there is beautiful winery also in Cumberland. See, we're trying to remove all these policies and all these handcuff around our farmer, because farmer can produce more than only crops and more than corns and beans, which is great and amazing, but also the bakery side of it. And then we just demonstrated and saw in COVID that people like to go for a drive on Sundays and Saturdays and see some of the local produce that local farmer can produce, cheeses and anything else. So I'm just very excited. I know that we've been working a long time on this on these policies and this proposal. I want to congratulate staff. I know that Mr. Steve Willis has been listening and hearing all the rural councillor and with his team and the official plan team. I am excited and I'm really ecstatic to see all these changes. And also you guys thought of everything. You thought about the cash and lieu, you thought about permission from a perspective of taxes and everything to help. And it is true. It's a truly policy that will help farmer to have a secondary income, diversify of farming. So thank you very much. And I can't thank all the hard work behind this. So I just want to say that. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Some of my residents raised concerns about solar installations being a permitted use on agricultural land, but what my understanding is that the inclusion of that is coming directly from the provincial policy statement, correct?
Correct.
Yes, well, I mean, solar farms are limited. They're not permitted on prime ag land, actually. It's wind turbines maybe, and they would be subject to the on-farm diversified uses limitations on the area of land that can be used on a farm, in a prime ag area for a wind turbine. So those things are not what's contemplated as part of these amendments. They're renewable energy, and they kind of fall into a separate category, and we'll be regulating those in the future under different provisions. in the zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And then just one more question. I mean, I know that you identified, removing CIL and reducing the property tax as reducing barriers, but I know in the consultation part of the report, the site plan control and development charges were listed as potentially increasing a barrier. So I was just wondering if you could comment on sort of the overall trade-off for residents, farmers.
I'll let America speak to that one. And also I'll just clarify or correct what I said. Solar is permitted, but once again, on prime ag land, it's limited in its size to a very small area. So the same size limitations. And then functionally speaking, something like that of that size, you can't operate a commercial solar farm at that size. You need a minimum of, I believe it's 6 or 10 hectares currently to make a profit on a solar farm. And certainly you'd have to have an enormous, most of our ag parcels aren't large enough to accommodate something of that size for a solar farm. So it would be an accessory thing to say for a farmer wanted to make some energy for themselves or something. But America,
thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Thank you very much. Marika, you want to add something? I see you put your mic on.
Yes, so Mr. Chair, I'll just in regards to the councillor's second question there, I'll just reiterate that the application of site plan control is what permits much more lenient policies overall. So the kind of alternative to applying site plan control would be what in fact many other municipalities have done, which is to require a zoning bylaw amendment for each and every diversified proposal, or to outline much more stringent zoning provisions for these uses, meaning that if you have a site circumstance that doesn't allow you to comply with that zoning provision, zoning is black and white. So if you're not able to comply with that, there's no opportunity for negotiation. You would have to then apply to vary the provision, which also comes with associated costs, excuse me. So though it seems like this is an additional cost, this is actually kind of the cheapest option there is, providing the broadest opportunity there is.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for me, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Any other question from my colleague for Marika or Carol? I just want to say thank you very much, Marika, for taking the time to meet with the member of the committee individually, including myself, with your presentation. I'm sure we saw so many hurdles and you answered so many questions, and I think still some of it will come your way. But the bottom line is clearly what we propose. If folks stick to that proposal, then that's a great news for them. If they want to expand on it, then they have to come back and you're going to deal with it case by case. Is that fair to say? Okay, so for my colleague, can we carry this report? The Agricultural Welfare Committee recommend that Council approve an amendment to the official plan to revise section 3.7 rural designations as detailed in document 1, details of recommended official plan amendment. So can we carry this report?
Carry.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you again, Marika and Carol. Job well done. Thank you so much. I heard from the clerk, we have some folks come back to item number 2. So on item number 2, I'm not sure, Mr. Clerk, who has joined us out of the 5 and who's not. Can you tell us, please, who's on the call?
Right now, I think we have Noura Dada, Michael Young, and Dan Thompson. Adam Thompson, sorry.
Adam, okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. And Nora, are you on the call right now? So I believe this is your first time speaking to a committee. First of all, I'd like to welcome you. And second, just a little bit about the rules is you have 5 minutes to speak to the committee. If you have any, and if committee member have any question for you, they'll ask you. And if you have any question, you can ask them and staff will answer them after you've done your presentation. So with that, we'll turn it to you, Nora.
Thank you, Mr. Council, and thanks for everyone. Good morning. I have a couple of questions. Since the community, there is a lot of people who live nearby this proposed project. Currently, there is around 71 residents. The plan is to have 370 resident or household. Currently, since the water is coming from the Carp City, we have been charged the highest rate in Ottawa as a commercial rate. My understanding from this proposal that this 200, the project on the 200 Bradley Road is gonna, share the same airport land. My question is, what is the consequences for residents? We have been charged, again, the highest water tier in entire Ottawa. So when this factory come in, are we responsible to pay the extra fees? Second, is there a plan for security for the residents who live nearby? I'm just curious because this is family-oriented community and we would like to know what is the impact for our families. And the third question is if there is wear and tear, because today with the current plan, which most of our residents is planning to take actions and try to find a solution, we pay fees for the airport. Now, when we bring another factory that consume kind of same services, how much money we are expecting to pay for this project? Because we don't want the residents to be impacted by adding extra services and water fees and other common charges. So I'm trying to understand if there is anything in plan to make sure that the residents are not paying consequences for such project. Thank you so much for your time and help.
Thank you, Nora. But I'm gonna just give you a little bit of history on the water situation to the benefit of my colleague as well. So the water comes from the village of Carp. It's a communal water system and it provides a trickle system. So basically the water comes from the village of Carp, goes to the Carp airport, get treated at the Carp airport, and then they get distribution to the residential and to the businesses in that area. Whatever you pay, to my knowledge, will and a new business comes along, they will have to pay their fair share, but I don't believe that will have an impact on your I believe Mr. Brown heard your question, and I'll turn it over to Adam if you'd like to answer the resident's question.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Regarding the water, there are two separate types of water usage at the Carp Airport. The residents use, as the speaker referred to, the Carp, an extension of the Carp Village water system, the municipal system, which is then distributed throughout the residences. On the industrial commercial park side of Carp Airport, they are on private services. They're not using the same system whatsoever. So there's no conflict there. Regarding her comment with respect to security, that would be a matter between the applicant and their licensing authority, which I believe is Health Canada, would dictate what is in place with regards to securing the facility. We would also look at those security type structures through the site plan control phase, which is the subsequent stage. And the third comment, I believe, I'm not exactly sure what the speaker was referring to. She did say wear and tear. I can confirm that the condominium corporation that's been established for the residents is separate than a condominium corporation which will be established in the commercial industrial area. So there are essentially almost two separate entities, while both on the Carp Airport, there's separate arrangements for each of these areas on site.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And Nora, I see you put your hand.
Yeah, if you allow me, thank you so much for your reply. Just to confirm, we are not being charged as a residential water tier. We still pay commercial rate. And the current elected condominium, we have problem with them because currently they are not sharing the financial record. We have complained many times and requested to get an idea to see what are we paying. But we will follow up in different kind of stream. We actually reached to the Ontario Condominium Authority to get more information. How do we get data? But just to bring this to your attention, currently as a resident, we are being kind of penalized with a commercial rate, the highest rate as a resident. So we're trying to figure out if this factory came into the picture, every house actually is a septic system. We shouldn't even pay the wastewater. So there is some sort of unclear financial impact to the resident. So we need to make sure there is nothing gonna impact us moving forward.
But Nora, that's really, and I see Adam wants to answer you, but that's really separate what we are talking about here. So here we're talking about, an application for a zoning amendment to Ross Bradley Road to permit this type of business. And as you heard from the manager of approval has said, this has really, their water will have no impact on what you, but I heard about the issue you have in your area with the CARP authority or CARP airport developer, but that has nothing to do with this application at this point. Adam, do you have something to add more to?
Yeah, essentially that, Mr. Chair, was what I was going to say, yes.
Well, thank you very much, Nora. And if you have any other concern and you feel like to email it to me, by all means, between now and July 7 when this item comes to council. So feel free, I'm your counselor as well. So you can email it to me if you like. Thank you very much for taking the time to come in, Nora. And our next speaker, Mark, you said Michael
Young.
Yep. Young? Michael, oh, I see Michael. Okay, Michael, you have 5 minutes, sir, to address the committee.
Okay, so hi, good morning, everybody. And I'm to join this. My concern is for the factory to be built near the airport, and because we are the restaurant here, and with a lot of young children, and the factory is going to be cannabis. And what I'm concerned is what are the impact for the young children grow up in this community, and it might be like a influence to them to this kind of stuff. And so that's why I'm all concerned about the old children grow up in this community. So I want to know what's this, if there's an influence to the children for the future.
Michael, you still have some time if you want to address the committee. If that's the only question, we can answer it to you at the end. But do you have any other concern?
Well, that's one concern. And other concern is are these like a factories going to be built in the share with this condominium or what? Because I'm so unclear about all these things too in this area right now for the development and the things that brought up. And the more things coming in, there's more things cost. My concern is like a mess up the community here.
Okay. Before I turn it to Adam, any question from my colleague to Michael? I see Councillor Moffat has his hand up. You have a question for the delegate, Councillor Moffat?
Yeah, just one. We hear this a lot, obviously, with the influx of cannabis retail facilities. I'm just curious, you're concerned about the influence of the cannabis production facility in your community. Would you feel the same way if it was a winery?
The winery is the winery. I don't feel that way because winery, it's like there's a legal age concern and also then, but because I'm worried about if the cannabis factory built here and then this community shouldn't be future like against the zone of the residential, and that's why I'm kind of very concerned about it.
Yeah. So the reason why I asked that, of course, is that cannabis is a legal product in Ontario now, in Canada, no different than wine. So that's the kind of the reality that we have to live in, that we can't treat it like it's some illicit drug anymore. The reality is it's no different than a beer store or an LCBO, or in this case, a brewery or a winery.
Yes, but the cannabis is recently, right? Just only recently brought up to the legal.
Doesn't change the legalities of it.
I would ask a question to everybody is are we concerned about our future Canadians to be not drug addict, to be like more normal type of living, not to the drug addict, if they can avoid of it.
Michael.
And I'm sure if the cabinet factory close to, and it's harder for parents and for everybody to be controlled, because there's somebody will do it and other influence other kids in here and influence things is more closer here.
Yeah, I don't want to get down a whole long path, but in fairness, alcohol is more addictive than weed.
And okay, and in fairness, this is not what this application is all about, just so let's be clear. So the application is for official plan zoning amendment. That's what it is. And if this application came in on any place on Carp Road corridor from March Road all the way to Stittsville, they wouldn't have to be on the front of us today. They would already gone to a site plan control and they start digging and they build it. So really being on the front of us today is just to add it to the zoning amendment that they're looking for. As we all know, the airport, it has land set aside for employment and future employment. And this company, they choose to apply in that area because they think they can use the air transportation facility to deliver their product, and their license is from the federal government, and they will be dealing with the medicine cannabis. It's not a retail cannabis. So rest assured, we're not going to be able to buy anything from them anytime soon. But this application is about the zoning, and that's one in front of us today. And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, if this application came anywhere on Carp Road all the way to Stittsville, you won't be here today asking for that.
You're correct, Mr. Chair, that the majority of the zoning designations in the Carp Road corridor already permit a cannabis production facility. And as you say, they would have proceeded directly to site plan approval without this step being necessary.
So that's what we're dealing with, Michael. So, but thank you for coming to speak to us. We really appreciate you. Is anybody else from the resident before we go to the last speaker? I believe last speaker, Mr. Thompson, wants to speak last. Anybody from the other 4 people? Mark showed up.
No, Chair, just the last one would be Adam Thompson at the present time.
Okay, we'll go to you, Mr. Thompson, to address the committee. You have 5 minutes. Adam Thompson, are you on a call?
Sorry, just unmuting, pardon me. Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'll keep my comments brief. Also on the line is the president of Canada Genetics, the applicant, Jeff Graham, who can speak to any questions about any of the operations that members of the committee might have. I'll just start by noting that, and this was in the staff report, but I'll just mention that when cannabis production facilities were first brought into the zoning bylaw, they were brought in through a separate staff-oriented process. And in doing so, staff looked at the industrial zones that these types of facilities would most be appropriate for, and they associated the cannabis production facility as being most in keeping with a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant in terms of the potential odor mitigation or impacts to the surrounding area. And so through that zoning amendment, city-initiated zoning amendment, cannabis production facilities were permitted in most general and heavy industrial zones. What was omitted from that report was the transportation zones, the T1A and the T1B zones that permit general and heavy industrial uses, but because they are isolated and sort of one-off, being the main Ottawa International Airport and then the Carp Airport, these industrial areas were essentially left out of that report. But in looking at that, the transportation zones, being industrial zones, are appropriate for this type of use. with respect to 200 Russ Bradley, Mark, I don't know if you're able to put up that the image that I forwarded on Friday.
Sorry, no.
Okay. That's okay. Just to kind of outline to the committee that some of the separation distances that we have. We looked at the Ministry of Environment guidelines for industrial areas. For this type of use, which would be a Class 1 use, the recommended influence area to be studied is 70 meters, 70. And the recommended separation distance is 20 meters. For this particular site, the closest residence is actually a single residence on Carp Road, located about 267 meters to the east. The nearest registered lot on the suburban side or residential side of the Carp Airport is approximately 1.4 kilometers. So we're well exceeding all of the separation distances that are recommended by the MOE guidelines. With respect to odor mitigation, as I mentioned, Mr. Graham is also on the line, and he can speak to any of the technical aspects of the odor mitigation that are anticipated. And just lastly, just to kind of touch on a couple of the points that the other delegates made. This project will be part of the business park condominium associated with the Carp Airport, and therefore will be paying or will be contributing to the core airport fees along with all of the residents. So they will be paying their fair share in terms of the core airport
1 minute.
Maintenance. Thank you. And lastly, in terms of the way this structure will appear on the ground, in terms of how this may appear in terms of impacts to children or to other people. This will simply look like an industrial building, a warehouse. There won't be any glowing signs or anything like that saying what's there. It's going to be, and again, it's going to be a secured facility as well. So from the street, other than the sign that's on the building, you wouldn't know what was actually going to be inside the building. So with that, I will wrap up, and if there are any other questions, I will remain on the line.
Thank you, Adam. Mr. Thompson, any question for Adam or Mr. Graham? If it's none, I think, thank you very much, both of you. Adam, just before Jeff leave, the water on this facility, no, first of all, the trickle system to the airport, Nora, she was speaking about, that's once is the water at the airport is not the city responsibility anymore. I think maybe Don Herwar can answer this question, because this is really strictly between the Carp Airport and the city on purchasing the water from the city, and then in return they resell it to their condominium with a special fee. But this application has their own water. They're using obviously well water, and it's already have, with the report we have the Hydro G and MVCAs involved and other, and they're all in agreement with it. But just for Nora, but the water itself and the cost of the water has absolutely nothing to do with the city or this application.
I'm not sure which Adam you're directing the question to, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I'm directing it to you, Adam Brown, or Don Herwire. Because
no problem, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you've described it quite correctly. That indeed the development on the residential side, there's a demarcation point after which the water feed from the city owns the pipe to the airport's authority, and condominium arrangement, from my understanding, owns the pipe. So you're right, the airport condominium essentially gets one bill from the city, and then it's up to the condominium corporation to charge their residents as they see fit. And regarding servicing for the proposed Canada Genetics facility, as well as any other facility within the commercial industrial area, you are correct. It's private services, and they're required to go through an appropriate hydrogeological report to prove up those services, which will be further done for this particular development at the site plan stage. There's been some preliminary work, and we'll be doing further work at the site plan stage.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I see Councillor Gower has his hand up. Councillor Gower, you have a question for whom?
Not for the delegation, but just a general comment. So,
okay, let me release the delegation. Thank you, Adam and Jeff. Then, if thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Now we have to say which Adam. So, Adam Brown, you have to stay. The other Adam can go. Go ahead, Councillor Gower.
yeah, it's just I want to acknowledge a couple of the concerns brought up by some of the delegations. First of all, I have no issues at all with the zoning recommendation in front of us and the staff report. But I do want to acknowledge, I'm a member of the Ottawa Board of Health, and so are you, Chair El Shantiri, and the issue of cannabis has come up a number of times. And what we've heard from public health is that increasing access and normalization of cannabis consumption does bring an increase in public health concerns, particularly for youth. I would say in this case, this is a production facility, not for retail, but for residents who are concerned about cannabis policy and so on. There are appropriate venues that you can take to express your concerns, for example, to the AGCO, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, when there are applications for retail facilities. Your MPP, your member of provincial parliament, who you can express concerns to about provincial policy, and to your MP, your federal representative around federal cannabis laws and so on. So there are a number of venues you can take, but in this case, this is a fairly straightforward zoning application, so I'll support it. But I hope residents with concerns will contact the appropriate government bodies to share your concerns and feedback. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gower, and I have to agree with you. We heard time and time again the accessibility or the availability of vibes or brewery, or now you can get beer delivered to your home. So anyway, there's many concerns, but not for this application. This is just basically for a zoning. As I said earlier, if this application came any other location than the airport, this will not be in front of us today. So if there's no further question on the item, Carrie?
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Brown, for not just for today, for you and the planner, Sarah, for informing the community and the councillor's office and helping them respond to some of the email and initiate some of the meeting to get where we are today. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of all of us, Adam and Sarah, for job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now we go back to, I believe, we're bouncing around items. Apologies. So item number 5, is that correct, Mark? We still have the general zoning provision, parking and secondary dwelling. So we have 2 speakers on the item. One of them is Mr. Miller, Tony Miller, and then second speaker is Chris Hackett. So we'll start with Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, I know you appeared in front of us before, so you have 5 minutes to speak to the committee. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see everybody this morning. Hope you all had a super weekend. My name is Tony Miller, and I'm the president of the Ottawa Small Landlord Association, as well as a voice of small landlords in Ottawa. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak today about the proposed changes to the secondary dwelling unit bylaw. The SDU bylaw is a successful program with over 800 SDU permits issued and the creation of roughly 1,600 new and legal rental units since 20. The SDUs have been built by small landlords. At the planning committee last week, I spoke about the impacts should staff's report as written today be approved by City Council on June 7th. A couple of examples are the city will see a significant decrease in the construction of SDUs, leading to fewer long-term rental units in the Ottawa's rental market. fewer rental housing choices for renters, including for families and students. I also talked about the need for additional consultations between staff and key stakeholders, and just want to thank Planning Committee for allowing additional consultations with staff, and also thank you to staff for coordinating these meetings that are coming up this week. Thankful for that too. And I also talked about the requirement to push the implementation date of the amended bylaw until January 1st, 2022. Implementing measures to restrict the size and number of bedrooms in SDUs appears to be counter to the provincial policy that we obtained this past weekend, and that encourages the creation of SDUs. In 2017, the Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs produced a document explaining secondary dwelling units, which states, and I quote, "The size of second units and the number of bedrooms should solely be regulated by the building code. The building code establishes health and safety standards for second units. As such, municipal bylaws should not seek to impose size or other standards that are regulated by the building code," unquote. Given this new information in the provincial government's policy document, Osla kindly asks that this committee not approve staff's report today, but instead ask staff to review the details of the 2017 Ontario Ministry of Municipal Affairs SDU document as part of the consultation process that is going on this week. Thank you.
Tony, sometimes your microphone is cutting out somehow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you done, Tony?
I'm done.
So I see we have question from Councillor Gower. Councillor Gower, your question to Tony, to Mr. Miller, sorry.
Yes, actually your microphone cut out on my end at the very start of your presentation. You mentioned a number of secondary dwelling units that have been built in the city. Can you just repeat that part of your presentation?
Yes, for sure. Let me scroll back up. According, the SDU bylaws is a successful program with over 800 SDU permits issued by the city. That's the number I got from city staff, which means roughly 1,600 new and legal rental units have been added since 2015.
Unfortunately, you broke up again there, Tony. Maybe I'll ask city staff once we get to that. I think I have 800 and 1,600. 800 and 1,600. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. And yes, I know there is a meeting scheduled for this Wednesday afternoon with city staff and some representatives, including yourself, of builders of SDUs to do some follow-up from last week's planning. So thanks for your presentation today.
Welcome.
Any other question for Mr. Miller? Sinan, thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for making the time. And I heard you on the plan committee as well. So, so this item came to both committee, to planning and agricultural affairs committee. So our next speaker, Chris Habits. Chris,
Habits,
yes. Good Habits. Oh, sorry, we missed the good out of your name, Chris.
Oh, sorry, the good isn't actually part of my name. It's just part of my Zoom name.
Oh, okay. All right, Go ahead, please.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. My name is Chris Habits. I'm an HVAC engineer, energy auditor, and I'm also a small landlord. I have one duplex in Vanier. And I just want to comment on this proposed change specifically to the SDU size limit in section 133 to 2 bedrooms and a square meter size limit depending on the property location and size of the unit. I don't believe that there is sufficient reasoning to make this change. As I'm looking at it, it appears to be purely to bring the sizing and bedroom limit in line with the coach house rules. And I don't believe that in itself is enough reasoning to make the change to limit the amount of housing in our city. So the city is in a self-declared housing emergency, as we all know, and I don't believe that limiting the size of SDUs will in any way help alleviate that situation. And I would also not assume that any currently planned SDUs will continue to be built if this bylaw goes through, or if this change goes through as planned, which would mean less housing that is planned to be put into the city is actually going to be built. As Tony mentioned, the Development Charges Act appears to suggest that this bylaw would not stand up to a challenge the zoning change would not stand up to a challenge. And as the city staff report in April mentioned, there are over 12,500 households waiting on a wait list for rent geared to income, with over 1,000 homeless households right now in the city. So the city obviously needs more affordable 3 and 4 bedroom units and should be large enough to hold a family of 3, 4, 5. And SDUs should be considered a big part of that plan moving forward. So I would ask that the committee retains the zoning for 133 on the size currently and does not move forward with this proposal today. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Habitz. Any question to Mr. Habitz? I see none. Thank you very much, sir, for coming today. And as we heard from the Councillor Gower, obviously there's discussion still happening on this item. I believe we had a motion last week on a planning committee. Was Mr. Desjardins was the motion from Councillor Riley and Councillor Meehan?
Yes, there was a change, as Councillor Gower could attest to on that planning committee.
Oh, okay, Councillor Gower.
Chair, on this specific item, the SDUs, it was a direction to staff to facilitate a meeting to better understand, well, to consult with the SDU owners and better understand the issues. I think committee was interested in the points they raised, but concerned about some unintended consequences if we started to make changes on the fly. So before this comes to council on July 7th, we committed to meeting and trying to come up with the right way forward. And then there was another motion from, I forget it was Councillor Leeper or Councillor Brockington on behalf of Councillor Meehan. Oh no, which was then superseded by a deferral motion from Councillor Moffat on the Jack River floodplain. But procedurally, this is getting very complicated. In any case, the Jack River piece of this, the floodplain mapping, has been deferred to a future date.
Okay, so I think it's very important to us to be notified of any outcome with the meetings happening, because I think Councillor Moffat and I, in the last term, we worked very hard on a coach house, and I want to make sure we don't have change of policy on the fly, whether for coach houses or for secondary homes. So I'm looking for an opportunity to continue working with you, Councillor Gower, before and as all of us, and keep us posted of your meeting with the staff. So and the industry. So I see you still have your hand up, Councillor.
Well, I just wanted to ask staff if they can clarify the number that they have in terms of the number of SDUs that have been built. We heard 800 units, I believe, from the delegation. So does staff have a number about SDUs? I'd also be interested if you have a breakdown between rural and urban, since we're looking specifically at the rural affairs side of this.
Mr. Chair, I don't presently have the breakdown between urban and rural, but I can confirm that the numbers that Mr. Miller mentioned are accurate. It is around 800 in the period of 2015 to 2020, on average somewhere around 150 or so per year.
And when was it that council changed the rules or clarified the rules around SDU, the whole discussion? What year was that?
Off the top of my head, Mr. Chair, I'm pretty sure secondary dwelling units would have been permitted prior to the 2008 bylaw. I want to say 2005 is when they were first kind of codified at the City of Ottawa level.
But there was another, council made a decision like 2017 or 2018 intended to encourage more SDUs. So I guess what I'm looking for is, has that actually worked? Have we actually encouraged more secondary dwelling units since we changed the policy around that more recently?
I'm not immediately aware of the decision being referred to, Mr. Chair. So I can't really speak to whether or not it's worked.
Maybe a little bit. I see Carol, she has her screen on and she's been around long, but I mean, just a little bit of history on this. Way back at the beginning of the amalgamation, we used to have what called the granny suite or the granny flat, and they have a different name for in the rural area. And they used to come every so often. I'm speaking for West Carlton March, which is I'm familiar with. The applicant will have to come to the city and ask permission to stay on for 10 years, whatever, until the granny flat is no longer in use. And then we work together with staff and we create the coach house. I'm talking about now strictly in the rural area. So in the rural area, as much as we try, I think to minimize the application process, we didn't see a lot of coach houses pop up. Like we have some, but we didn't see a lot. So maybe Carol, you can shed a little bit of light on the history of this the secondary dwelling.
Sure. So we've got secondary dwelling units, just to clarify, just to get it all straight. Secondary dwelling units are within the principal dwelling, and coach houses are in a building that's accessory and separated from the principal dwelling. And in leading up into the creation of the new zoning bylaw in 2008, there was work done on secondary dwelling units to create rules for the same set of rules for the amalgamated city. And those came into effect and were brought into the new zoning bylaw, so that all the same rules apply for secondary dwelling units. And then around in 2017, there was an OPA, I believe, Robert, just in terms of the dates, but that's on the timelines, when we started to implement the new permissions for coach houses that came into the Planning Act. And I understand that uptake has been rather slow with these. I think it has to do, and Robert can comment on this as well, but it does have to do with costs. And in the case of the rural area, there are constraints because I think my understanding is servicing, but servicing being a cost, and actually in both cases. And Robert, if you'd like to provide more details on that, please go ahead. In terms of
Mr. Chair, I think that's pretty much correct. The uptake on coach houses has certainly been limited overall. I would say that the servicing considerations would be, I would say, factor number one in why we've seen a much more limited uptake. I don't have the number specifically on number of coach houses in the rural area that have happened. I would not be surprised if it's something that I could count on my two hands.
Mr. Herwire, I see you pop up on the screen. Anything you want to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just thought I would add in terms of, because we had a recent inquiry on this. Since 2017, we have had 52 coach houses either approved or currently under review. And again, I don't know the breakdown in terms of urban and rural. I think most of those are urban. So I think Robert's idea of counting them on two hands is probably about right for rural.
Okay.
That was the clarity I was looking for. Thank you.
And we have a question from Councillor Meehan and then Councillor Moffat. Councillor Meehan.
Thanks very much, Chair. On the topic of the rural coach houses, my question has to do with river properties along the river. When you look at a river property versus a city property, the location of usually the primary residence is different in a city property than it is a rural property. The rural property, like a cottage or a house on the river, usually is located closer to the river. And I've seen a case where a coach house took advantage of the rules of the city and put a coach house closer to the river than the primary residence. And I'm just wondering if we're seeing more applications where people who live near the river are locating their coach house closer to the river, because this has happened. And I would like to find out if in fact, it's not, coach houses aren't supposed to be the primary residence. It turns out it can be closer to the river than the primary residence in a rural area on a river. Are we seeing more applications like that? Because I think they can be quite problematic given that people want their river views. The neighbors in these areas are having a bit of a problem. So I'm wondering if we're seeing more examples of this happening.
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware offhand of any such examples. I would advise off the top of my head that a coach house, just like any other building or structure, is subject to setback requirements from rivers or any other water body. I'd also remind the committee that I think what's in scope right now is a rewrite of the secondary dwelling unit rules. And in zoning terms, a secondary dwelling unit is different from a coach house. It's a unit that's within a principal building. The coach house rules, which are in effect, are not proposed to be rewritten in any way by the report before us. Thank you.
This is a different topic. I guess I'll bring it up in another way later, but thank you. Okay.
Councillor Moffat.
Thanks. No, just some editorialism a little bit. I think when committee approved the coach house policy, I think we knew full well we were getting more comments on it than we knew we'd get coach houses on. We knew full well at the time that this was not something that was going to all of a sudden proliferate in the rural area, maybe not even in the urban area, but it was obviously a policy direction at the province, and we followed suit with our zoning so that we could permit something that had been declared legal by the province. I think, to be fair, I think the uptake of them is kind of what we expected. I don't think we expected to see these on every street in the rural area. I think we didn't expect it to be a significant increase. So I think 52 citywide might actually be a higher number than I would have anticipated, to be fair.
Any other question to our staff and Carol, Robert, Don? See none. So on the item, obviously we have to, that Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 relating to various sections of the bylaw as detailed in document 1. That Planning Committee and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the consultation details section of this report be included as a part of brief explanation. So can we carry this item? Carrie? Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. And I believe that's our final item. Is that correct, Mr. Desjardins?
That's correct, Chair.
So we have no open mic speakers. We have no item in camera. Any inquiries? We didn't, none to date. We didn't hear any. So before we adjourn, so on Thursday, our next meeting is Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. And within a couple of days, our Canada Day. So I'd like to wish all of you and your family happy Canada Day, safe summer, and we'll see you back on July 7th. Obviously, we have council meetings. So have a great day, everyone. And we are adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.